Hello everyone. You will already know that this is not Ewelina's voice. I forgot to record the sound of Ewelina and the whole stream for 1 minute only. I restarted the stream after a minute. So I apologize, and we are learning. I will do better next time. Oh yeah, and by the way, you cannot hear my voice at the end either. You can only hear Ewelina answering questions, which is awesome. So thank you for understanding the situation. And for 1 minute, it's gonna be completely silence, but I'll bring on some elevator music if I can find any. Bye-bye.
Caveats to that, but at a high level, these would be relating to unstructured data. So your individual files, your attachments, your calendar events, your emails. On the other side of the fence, we've got the data governance side of things, right? So that's where Microsoft Fabric comes in, AWS, SQL databases. So it's essentially for your structured data. Again, with a couple of different caveats, you can have unstructured data sitting within those repositories as well, but that's also how you bring in data beyond Microsoft 365, or generally speaking, beyond the Microsoft ecosystem, and how you can extend the Purview capabilities to maybe some of the SaaS platforms or integrated with the likes of AWS and so on. Today, we are going to be focusing only on the risk and compliance and the data security side of things, because Intune is not required for the data governance. What happens within the data governance space, that its own kind of section within the Microsoft Purview portal. You do need an Azure subscription to manage and scan those data sources. So it's not going to be very relevant for our session today. Okay, so you know how I told you that Purview is very comprehensive, very complex? Well, when we look at that list of products and solutions, this is what it currently looks like. And it's something that is always kind of changing. There are new products being added. So when you think about it, maybe someone managing the Defender suite, within the Defender suite, maybe you've got about, I don't know, 7, 8 items, right? If you look at Entra, I know there's within the Entra suite, you've got the identity governance, you've got now GSA and so on. But Purview, I think, is the most comprehensive of them all. And it's probably one of the reasons why not many people have much interest in that, because when I look at my colleagues, or when I look at my own experience working for different organizations, one of my colleagues who would go in to do like an Entra project or a Defender project, and from start to finish, maybe it would take them a couple of weeks, and that's it. They go in, they have a conversation with the client, maybe they hold like 2-3 different workshops to agree on the design configurations. They put in policies in place, the customer tests them, and it's fine and it's finished. With Purview, some of those projects can take years to complete, because you need to have a full strategy in place, plan it properly. Sometimes you need to get that management buy-in. So I also need to be involved in those really hard conversations with the clients most of the time, because it's not as easy as it sounds. You cannot just put a policy in place that will essentially impact the end user experience and just do it without any planning, any end user training, and so on. So I like my puzzles, as you can probably see from my slides. So each one of the elements within the Purview suite, that kind of directly correlates with the next solution that you might have within this stack. So when you have your foundation within the information protection, which I'm just going to cover in a second, that foundation then can be used within other solutions and products and tools within Purview as well. So they're all kind of intertwined, even before like we touch on Intune. Okay, so how about bridging that gap, right? Or bridging Purview with Intune? So different portals, different roles, but essentially the same mission, right? So Purview kind of comes in because you want to understand, classify, and detect different risks. And Intune is there to help you enforce that, control it, and remediate it in some shape. So together, it's all about that continuous data protection across all the different endpoints. So your devices, your applications, and your users. If you just do Purview alone, you will not be able to cover or remediate all of the different data security gaps. So you do need to kind of look at that more of a holistic approach by utilizing the different tools that you're already paying for and looking at that wider Microsoft compliance and security stack as well. I kind of laugh at the conversations going on in the chat because, yeah, Purview project is definitely not 2 days. It's more like 2 years. I agree with that, but yeah, sensitivity labels and call it a day. Nice. Okay, so Purview information protection, that's our foundation for Microsoft Purview or anything kind of data security related. So it's one of the solutions within the suite. It's designed to help you classify, label, and protect your data. So that's essentially, if we look at that hierarchy of, how does that work and what are some of the components of information protection. So at a high level, information protection divides into two sections, right? So on one hand, we've got our data classifiers. So I'm going to dive into them in just a second, but at a high level, we've got a trainable classifier, sensitive information types, and exact data match classifiers. That's to help us classify our data, and once we do classification, we can then use that classification within our Purview policies. On the other hand, we've got a sensitivity label. So these are kind of like the digital stamp that you can put on your document or your email to, one, classify it, but also introduce an element of encryption so that only authorized people can actually get access to those different files with a specific stamp on it. More about that data classification. So 3 types of data classifiers that are within Purview. With the trainable classifiers and sensitive information types, it is something that comes in built in to your tenancy, depending on the level of license. That will determine the number of the specific classifiers that you have out of the box. So you can obviously then go in and create your own ones as well and fully customize them and tailor to your organizational needs. So trainable classifiers, this is the type of a classifier that would use a little bit of a machine learning to identify the content based on the context and the meaning. So most popular examples of trainable classifiers would be CVs, resumes, business contracts, that type of stuff. They're not widely accurate. Even if you fully try and customize them and train the systems by uploading your positive and negative samples, I think the best accuracy that I've ever gotten with them was around 80 or 85%, which, if you look at very large organizations with millions of different files, that's definitely not ideal because that still leaves that 10 or 15% of data that will be misclassified, and having misclassified data is definitely not fun. So another type of a classifier that we have is a sensitive information type. So again, they can be built in or custom, and these are based on regular expressions or keywords or checksums, that type of stuff. So the ones that come out of the box, probably the most popular ones would include credit card numbers, physical addresses, passport numbers, that type of stuff. Again, you can go in and create your own one, fully customize them to satisfy your business requirements. Again, when it comes to accuracy level, you can probably get them into a good shape, but that requires a long period of time of just testing and trying to mix and match and combine different parameters, and excluding maybe some of the stuff that comes up as a false positive quite often. And then last but not least, we've got something called an exact data match classifier, which I'm definitely a big fan of because This is a type of a classifier that will only match your unique values that you upload to the system. So think about a situation where maybe you've got a client database, and within that client database, each one of your clients would have an associated, let's say, ID number. It would have their address or phone number on file or whatever. And for example, you guys are my client. Your ID associated with your organizations would be, let's say, ABC123. So I'm only looking for that ABC123 within my files. I'm not going to look for any other pattern or any other structure built around that specific alphanumeric number, right? So you can get very good results with exact data match classifiers because they are unique and they precisely are able to identify the sensitive data from your own data set that you upload to the system. Okay, so just quickly scanning the chat if there are any questions, but feel free to come off mute and let me know if there's anything that I should be answering now at this stage. Please don't read the chat. Fair enough. Okay. Cool. Oh, okay. And again, a fun fact about the built-in classifiers is that you can actually copy them either via GUI or via PowerShell. And you can base the custom one on essentially the same parameters, but you can just change the confidence of your classifier or add some of the parameters, so you don't need to recreate it from scratch. You can just copy that and make it a more unique. Okay, so next we've got a data loss prevention. So data loss prevention essentially just helps you identify, monitor, and protect your sensitive data from being accidentally shared or leaked outside of the organization or just sent to someone internally that that file or that email shouldn't be sent to. And I stress the fact that it's about the accidental sharing rather than something that someone is trying to do deliberately. With data loss prevention, we're not going to stop a user from taking a screenshot of something or just taking a picture on their phone, right? So it's definitely something that everyone should be aware of. When it comes to data, yeah, exact data match classifiers. Okay, is there a continuous upload for exact data matches? Use an example of employee IDs, for example. What about JML processes? Um, so not out of the box. You can definitely build a script that will automatically pull some data from your database and then update your exact data match classifier with that data and relatively try to keep it up to date. But when it comes to the out-of-the-box tools that Microsoft provides, there's nothing that Microsoft offers at this moment in time that will make that process easy. It's kind of the same as the HR connector for inside service management as well. In theory, it should work. You should be able to fully automate it, but unless you just run a script on a schedule, there's nothing kind of outside of the box that will help you with that. Correct. Yeah. So you will just need to have your data in the same structure and in the same columns as you've got your exact data match classifier set up. So it can be directly kind of imported into that specific file or into that data repository. So I can show you some examples and feel free to ping me directly either on Discord or other social media platforms as well. I might just have an example of that script as well, so I might be able to give you a sample. It's getting definitely better. I'm currently doing a data retention project that requires me to develop a lot of different scripts. So GitHub integration with Visual Studio Code definitely helps. But a Purview PowerShell is so heavily ingrained behind Exchange Online module. It doesn't really have its own kind of separate one. So for some of the tasks, you're still connecting to Exchange Online. For some of the other tasks, you are connecting to Connect IPPS session. So it gets a little bit complicated, but I can definitely do most of the stuff via PowerShell when it comes to labeling or DLP or InsideOS or retention. So, but it's something that I'm actively working on. So I want to get much better at it. I wouldn't be as good as my colleague from Threadscape called William Francelet, but I'm decent, I think. Probably, yeah. Yeah, but it's very niche. It's very specific, you know what I mean? So that doesn't kind of translate well into the likes of Entra or Defender. You can probably do most of the stuff if you have a really good knowledge around Purview, but it is very niche. And that's probably one of the reasons why not many people like it. And the Yeah, and also the GUI is not great. It's anyone kind of working within the Purview GUI within that specific portal, they will know exactly what I mean when I say that it's very flaky. Even yesterday and today, I was trying to create adaptive scopes. Again, it was just for the retention periods, and my KQL queries were actually correct. So KQL, that's different. I'm not talking about Custo query language, is the keyword query language. So yeah, I was trying to create an adaptive scope and I couldn't do it. It was just showing me a notification with an error message, and I waited a couple of minutes, tried it again, and it worked. Nothing wrong with my query, just Portal being flaky. And I got the same via PowerShell as well, so it didn't matter whether I was using the GUI or trying to do it programmatically. Cool. Okay, so when it comes to data loss prevention and what is, I suppose, very relevant to Intune specifically is that at a basic level, even with a business premium or Microsoft 365 E3, you can do some basic stuff for the core DLP around the cloud repositories like your Exchange or SharePoint or OneDrive. However, when Intune kind of comes into play is at that Microsoft 365 E5 level of license, because that includes our endpoint data loss prevention, which looks at the different activities going on people's devices. It also covers DLP for Microsoft Teams and also includes the Defender for Cloud Apps integration as well. Obviously, some of the organizations cannot afford a full E5, so you can combine it, let's say combine a E3 or Business Premium with a compliance add-on now called Purview Suite, and that will give you nearly the same equivalent number of different features covered by a full E5. So I'm sure you can find this yourselves as well, but there is a compliance licensing comparison by Microsoft available online as well, which actually shows you what's actually included at each one of the enterprise level license. There are a couple of different caveats to that, which I will probably cover under Insider Risk Management as well, because it wasn't until I was working on a project with a client that I found out that adaptive protection for insider risk management and conditional access that requires an enterprise license. So you need to have a full E5 because A5 or G5 do not cover that, even though the documentation from Microsoft states otherwise. So it's just something that I came across. So I will go back to the DLP in just a second, but just to cover insider risk management as well, because it's going to be relevant for our use cases and how we can all correlate it and kind of join it together in our testing scenarios. So insider risk management kind of does what it says on the tin, right? If you've got an insider within your environment, whether this is a contractor, whether this is a full-time employee, Insider risk management is one of those solutions that helps you detect, investigate, and respond to different threats. So when DLP lacks some of the capabilities where it might be fairly useful to have some kind of a combination of the different signals and different alerts coming from both the browser and the actual machine, so your endpoint, and showing you a story of a specific attack or a specific exfiltration. Insider risk management is here to kind of show you that full story. So it's very good at picking up sequences of activities where maybe if they're on their own, if someone just downloaded like a bunch of files from SharePoint Online, it might not be perceived as risky. However, in my experience, I've worked with a lot of organizations where we were actually, by tracking insider risk management alerts and policies, we were able to find that there were groups of people that try to spread out those data exfiltration activities over a period of time. So let's say one day they could have downloaded like 500 different files from SharePoint. If they had sensitivity labels, they could have just downgraded those sensitivity labels, let's say from confidential to something like public, because if you've got a data loss prevention in place on the back of the confidential label, there is probably something that will stop you from sharing that data outside of the organization or with some unauthorized users. But, someone has a permission to change that label or just remove it entirely, there's nothing from the DLP perspective that it will still be blocking that user. So we found that if someone was after downloading a bunch of files, there was some kind of a label removal or label downgrade going on, and then maybe, after a couple of days, they try to exfiltrate that via email. Then maybe they try to copy that onto a removable USB device as well. So insider risk management will show you that full story, just how Defender will show you like a full attack path as well. So it's very handy to use, and it kind of covers those gaps that data loss prevention wouldn't necessarily help you cover. When it comes to licensing, so insider risk management is only reserved for the Microsoft 365 E5 or the equivalent. It's not available to Business Premium or E3 licenses and customers. Adaptive protection, as I mentioned, you do need to have the Enterprise E5 rather than A5 or G5. So again, you won't find it in the documentation. It's something that I flagged with them, so I haven't seen it updated just yet, but documentation is just inaccurate. So when it comes to prerequisites, and this is where Intune will come into play here. So when we're looking at that E5 or the equivalent level of license, you can benefit from insider risk management, or you can benefit from endpoint data loss prevention. I kind of feel like rolling out this because when you check different policies and what they specifically need, or if you want to integrate insider risk management with other solutions, or when you want to introduce like a HR connector, the list of prerequisites that you need to fulfill, that can be quite long. So again, at a high level, there are a couple of caveats to that, but at a high level, before any detection works for endpoint data loss prevention or insider risk management, you need most of these. So you need to have your devices onboarded to Microsoft Purview. You do need to have the browser extension deployed to supported browsers. And ideally, you would want to have your devices enrolled into Intune. So that's how we kind of bridge that gap here. And that's where we need to integrate the solutions together or use Intune for the data security purpose as well. So when it comes to the process of device onboarding, Microsoft Purview agent is the same one that is used for Defender for Endpoint. So it's one agent that is running two different services. So it used to be one agent with one service, but those services have been split. So one of the services on that same agent is just running the anti-malware protection, whereas the other one is responsible for the data loss prevention and the insider risk management protection. So in other words, you do need to have your device onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, at least in a passive mode. So for example, if you've got a third-party antivirus software as your primary anti-malware protection, you would need to have Defender for Endpoint on those devices as well, but Defender for Endpoint will be in a passive mode, whereas the third-party solution will be in an active mode. So how to do it, again, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it. So you can either do it from the security admin center, or you also have an option to do it from the Purview admin center itself. So if you navigate over to purview.microsoft.com, and if you go over to settings and then onboarding, if it's a deployment method that you require, maybe it's a local script for up to 10 machines, you can just download it directly from here without actually going to the security admin center. For other cases, again, you can rely on group policy, but ideally for this specific scenario in our this evening session, we're going to be using Intune as our device management method. So again, a couple of Oh, sure. Well, still, I do work with a lot of clients, and some of them are still relying heavily on GPO. We're trying to get them all to use Intune, but it's a long progress. Same with the hybrid join rather than intra join, but again, different clients, different needs, and different opinions as well. Okay, cool. Perfect. So a couple of prerequisites again here to be able to onboard your devices to Defender for Endpoint and then Purview via Intune. So you do need to have the Microsoft Intune connection enabled. And again, I'm sure you guys are more familiar with it, and you can probably tell me more about Intune than my knowledge kind of allows. But again, you can do it via advanced features in the Security Admin Center. And we're going to be using the endpoint security blade to create an endpoint detection and response policy. So you can do it automatically from a detector once you've got that connection established by enabling the Microsoft Intune connector in the advanced settings. So this is just an example of a policy that you can just configure. Again, the sample sharing, you can just enable that. And then we've got the deprecated telemetry reporting frequency within that policy that probably shouldn't be there anymore, but Microsoft has it anyways. Again, you create that policy, you assign it to your users, you wait a little bit of time, and then your devices will then get onboarded to Defender. So you can obviously then check the status of that onboarding within the security admin center, but I just kind of want to jump a couple of hoops ahead and then go into the Purview admin center just to check on the device onboarding. So just onboarding your device to Defender for Endpoint is not enough, because you then need to explicitly then onboard that device to Microsoft Purview. So how do we do that? Well, you jump into the Purview Admin Center, you go into Settings, and then under Device Onboarding, you click into Devices and you turn on the Device Onboarding. So what will that do? It will start automatically onboarding your macOS and your Windows devices that are currently sitting in Defender or have been onboarded to Defender. You only have to do it once for each tenant. So once you do that, you will get this pop-up here where you need to confirm that you definitely want to turn on that device onboarding, and it will actually tell you explicitly that any devices that are already onboarded to MDE will appear in the device list on this specific screen. So once you click OK, that process can take anything from a couple of minutes to a couple of hours, but those devices will start popping up in here. And at this moment in time, when the device monitoring is being turned on, there's nothing you can do about it, only just wait. So after a period of time, you can then check in here whether all the devices are after populating within the portal. And at this stage, you do have an option that if you do not want to, let's say, have the device onboarding enabled for macOS, it's only now that you do have that option to turn it off for a specific operating system. Let's say you've got a device in here and you just want to double check that the configuration status is definitely updated and it's got all the prerequisites. So as a prerequisite, the Purview onboarding will look for the configuration status against the real-time protection and behavior monitoring. So it is going to flag it for you if there's something wrong, if some of the prerequisites haven't been met, and then you do need to deploy it perhaps via, ideally through Intune as well, but I'm sure you guys are more familiar with what that process looks like as well, so I'm not going to be diving deeper into here. One thing that I do want to flag, if we look at the DLP policy sync details over here, see this link here, view all policies on this device. So when you deploy data loss prevention policies within the DLP solution itself, it will show you the sync status whether it has propagated across the ecosystem. However, if you're at the device level, before you test something, you want to double check whether the policy has propagated and whether you're ready to start testing, you can click on view all policies, and that will show you the different policies of which this device was in scope of. So this is just a quick way to determine that, okay, if you're testing on your specific device and you've put in your DLP policy in place, is it actually fully propagated, or do you need to wait another while? So it does tell you that it takes roughly up to two hours to reflect on the dashboard. The new DLP policies that you put in place, they roughly take about half an hour to fully propagate, but that might not be reflected in the GUI straight away. So there is a tool that I can share with you guys after the session as well that I received from a Microsoft employee as well, how to validate that. But they do propagate a little bit quicker than they used to. So it's definitely a good thing. Okay. So another thing that we do need to do as well, in terms of covering all the prerequisites, is to deploy the Microsoft Purview web browser extension. So again, we can use Microsoft Intune to deploy the different configuration policies to our browsers. If your business supports Google Chrome and Firefox, you can deploy them all via Intune as well. Again, I can just send you some links to the Microsoft documentation. I'm not going to go through that entire process, how to actually deploy it and what that configuration specifically looks like. But again, we're using Intune here to deploy one of the prerequisites to our devices that are already onboarded to Microsoft Purview as well. And for anyone asking, do we actually need that Purview extension for Microsoft Edge? Is it needed for Google Chrome? What specific solution is it actually needed for? Well, I feel like just how Shakespeare had this very existential crisis and that question that he kept asking himself, to be or not to be. I think that people within the compliance space also have that dilemma. So to deploy Purview extension or not to deploy it. Well, to take you out of your misery, I do have a comparison table to show you where it's actually needed, where it's actually required, or what specific scenarios are not supported. In short, for data loss prevention and insider risk management, you don't need the Microsoft Purview extension for Microsoft Edge, but you do need it for Google Chrome and Firefox. It is not required and not supported in some cases within macOS operating system. However, for another solution within the Purview stack called Data Security Posture Management for AI, which, by the way, during Ignite, it was announced that Data Security Posture Management and Data Security Posture Management for AI are now being merged into one solution. So within the Purview portal, you will notice that you will have duplicates now of DSPM for AI. One will say classic, the other one will just say that it's in preview. The one in preview, whenever you click on any of the blades in there, you will just tell you that it's not ready yet because it's Microsoft kind of still in the middle of rolling out those features. So for data security posture management for AI, which is essentially responsible for giving you information around AI interactions, and it actually gives you the level of visibility where you can see the prompt and the response between the user and Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever other tool your users are using. Well, for data security posture management, you do need to have that extension deployed even to Microsoft Edge. EJ, anyone doing SC 401? Yeah, I could have just given you that table to study because that just answers your question. Okay, cool. So there are some other optional prerequisites for data loss prevention and insider risk management. I just want to briefly show you guys. Remember how I said that classification is your foundation for a really good data loss prevention or insider risk management plan. Well, you can fully customize your types of classifications, right? So again, I'm a big fan of customizing that and tailoring that to your specific organization. So I would definitely recommend that your organizations go and do that, because even if you spend a little bit longer on building that data classification before you put your policies in place, you will definitely benefit from it in the longer run. If you try and rush it and just deploy policies without putting that foundation in place, that where that foundation is actually good and accurate, you will be probably sorry after a while, because the amount of false positives that you will be getting from your policies that will fully outweigh the benefits or the disadvantages of spending a little bit more time on getting the classification right. Obviously, if you've got a sensitivity label taxonomy as well, that definitely helps, because then within your data loss prevention policies, you can put in conditions in place based on those specific labels. So for example, you can say, if my content is labeled as confidential all employees, prevent my users from sending that outside of the organization. So again, this is just an example. What I would always suggest that you guys go and do is also modify and fully customize the endpoint data loss prevention settings, which are set in a different portion of the Purview portal than the usual data loss prevention policy. So if you navigate over to settings and then data loss prevention, over here you can modify some of the key endpoint DLP settings, just like, for example, going to an allow or block list for uploading sensitive files to specific service domains. If you want to prevent your end users from uploading sensitive data to Gen AI tools, this is where you do need to go and modify it. So Phil had a really good question before the session started. So just as an example, under the service domains, you can specify which specific domains you wish to allow or you wish to block. And for most organizations, it's actually easier to go into and allow more in here and only allow a very specific service domain that our users are authorized to use or authorized to upload data to, whereas blocking everything else. Because if you do it the other way around, there's definitely a list of something that you want to block that will be definitely longer and bigger than the list that you want to allow. Okay, so let's say we've got a specific scenario where we want to block an upload of sensitive data to the likes of Dropbox and WeTransfer. And also when we look at the Gen AI websites service domain group over here, this is something that Microsoft manages and curates for you. So if you click on that link in here, that will bring you to a documentation within Microsoft Learn that will show you a list of all the URLs that Microsoft is managing for you in terms of the Gen AI websites that you can block within a data loss prevention policy. If you don't like that list, or maybe it's not specific enough for you, you can then always go and create your own ones as well. So in this specific scenario, which I want to show you and take you through, we are going to block our users from uploading sensitive data to Dropbox and WeTransfer. So we do have our endpoint DLP settings configured. Within our data loss prevention policy itself, we are then saying that our conditions are, if content contains EU debit card numbers and credit card numbers, and you can fully customize the level of confidence for your classification and also the threshold as well. So in this specific case, we've got a 10 to any, but you can definitely modify it to whatever suits your business. So we're saying, okay, if it contains this specific threshold of these specific sensitive information types within our actions, then we're going to block those uploads to service domains. You can also combine different operators and different statements within your DLP rules as well. So you can use and or. You can also use the not statement as well. So the not statement requires you to group specific conditions together, but it's definitely achievable and just gives you a little bit more granularity. And then within our actions, apart from just doing the uploads, whether it's blocking or allowing or just auditing to service domains, you can also control things like copy to clipboard, copy to a removable USB device, copy to network share, print, and so on. So again, a little bit of granularity. You can even get down to a level of protection where you are only allowing very specific people to print sensitive information on very specific printers, maybe the ones that are only in the office rather than the ones that people have at home. Okay, so in this specific case, we've got a user that is on a device that is managed by Intune, and it's also onboarded to Defender for Endpoint and Purview then. This specific user has an Excel file set on her desktop with some financial information that includes the credit card numbers and the debit card numbers, and we've got a WeTransfer blocked as a service domain within our endpoint DLP settings. So the minute that this specific user tries to upload that file to WeTransfer, she's going to be blocked. And this specific pop-up is coming from the Microsoft Edge protection, right? So because it's Microsoft Edge, it doesn't require the browser extension for data loss prevention. And this pop-up, this notification that you see here, you can fully customize it within your data loss prevention policies. So this is just an example how you can block someone from uploading that sensitive data. Another example, let's say we've got a policy where we want to block with override an activity where someone tries to copy a sensitive file containing some sensitive information to a removable USB device. In this specific case, it's no longer the data loss prevention within the web browser. So it's the agent itself, again, one agent for MD and Purview, but two different services. So the service that is running data loss prevention, I don't know why it does that whenever I use the pen, but just ignore it. My hand is definitely not shaky. I don't know why it's doing that. So in this specific, yeah, maybe, yeah. I'm not too bad actually. So yeah, I might just pursue that at some stage and show you guys what I've been working on. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I can. Yeah. Oh, I haven't really done much over the last couple of months, but funny enough, the logo for Welka, it is something that I actually drew on an iPad. This is something that I came up with, and then I just put it through AI to put some color around it and to make it fully digital, but it's based off of my own drawing. And I design tattoos, so yeah, yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. So just going back to the demo. So this specific notification is coming from the service on that agent, where we've got our device onboarded to Microsoft Purview. And again, in this specific case, the user is blocked, but as long as they provide you with a justification, they can override the block action in here. So, they can type in a message here, which then will be available within the audit logs and within the Activity Explorer, or it can alternatively also go to their manager or a nominated person, for a review and stuff like that. And again, within the portal, you then have an option to fully investigate what exactly happened. So that will give you a lot of context around who was the user, where did they try to upload that information, was there any sensitive information in there contained within the file that they were trying to upload, and so on. So it's quite useful. How do people deal with the justifications? So not many people know, but actually within your data loss prevention policies, and I don't know whether you guys are familiar with that process, but you need to explicitly add another condition that will actually send those justifications to the manager for an approval. You can definitely use a Power Automate to trigger a flow, but that introduces a lot of complexity and a couple of additional steps. But this feature is actually built into your DLP wizard. So you can just add another condition regardless of what you're trying to do with your classification or with your labeling or whatever. It's something that a lot of people would just forget about, or they just don't even know that it is possible. But yeah, there is a specific condition for those justification items that they actually get sent as an email or a notification to their manager or a nominated person. Really good question. I don't know. Just I keep scanning the chat, but it's so random. It's like Purview, not Purview, Purview, not Purview. So if there's any Purview related question that I haven't answered, just let me know, guys. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. And some other prerequisites that are completely optional for the likes of insider risk management, what we can also cover again, you can base it on your classifiers and you can use it to fully kind of optimize your specific policy. So rather than looking at all the classification, you can prioritize either your SharePoint sites or your sensitive information types and so on. You can obviously utilize your sensitivity labels as well, which kind of help you narrow down the scope and get rid of some of the false positives. As mentioned before, you can also set up a HR data connector as well, so that for your leavers, that data can automatically then go into your policy, so people can dynamically get added to the scope of your policies based on their resignation date and so on. So you can see here that whenever you try and create an insider risk management policy, all the policies are based on a template. So you cannot override that. You cannot just set up a custom policy just like you can do with an data loss prevention. And each one of those templates will show you what are the specific prerequisites that you have to meet. And you will notice that most of the templates do require your devices onboarded to Purview and also the Purview extension deployed to your devices as well. So again, having Intune in place is definitely beneficial because that can help you get those prerequisites set up very quickly. And what I would always suggest that you guys go and do as well is fully customize the insider risk management settings. So again, similar scenario to the endpoint DLP settings as well. You can just introduce a little bit of granularity and also get rid of some of the false positives by setting up detection groups, whether these are for sensitive SharePoint sites or specific classifications, or even if you feel like some of the classifications that are inaccurate, that you don't really want generating any alerts, you can put them into a detection group for, let's say, sensitive information types, and then you can utilize them within the global exclusions as well. I do have a lot of content around insider risk management on my blog, and I did a session on YouTube on the Threadscape YouTube channel as well around insider risk management, where we covered all of those for anyone interested. So feel free to check it out, guys. Okay, so within insider risk management, you can base it on the triggering events, whether these are office indicators or device indicators like downloading content from OneDrive and so on. And then it's all going to be based on the specific thresholds before something generates an event for you. So you can either fully customize your thresholds, where you go through a very long list of the triggers and the triggering events, and you modify each one of them, or you can base it around the user behavior. So if Marion accounts is used to only downloading 50 files a week, but suddenly she starts downloading 500, well, the system is going to flag it for you. Definitely don't enable everything, because that is very, very noisy. And something quite interesting here, so adaptive protection, this is something that helps you dynamically change the user behavior, but also stop an insider within your organization in their tracks when they try and exfiltrate data. So you can use adaptive protection in conjunction with conditional access. And again, this requires the full E5 license level. You can obviously modify the risk levels, but again, this is kind of at a very high level, and I'm also conscious of the time as well, so I'll try and wrap up soon. So okay, so that's been in place for at least a year and a half, but it is, I would say, relatively new, but yeah, definitely been around for about a year and a half at least. But it's really, really cool. Awesome, awesome to hear. Perfect. Hopefully no one leaves, but I do appreciate that everyone is busy and having their own lives and stuff and things to finish or whatever, or kids and family life and friend life. So again, don't feel pressure to stay on, but I would love to have you all until the end of the session. So for insider risk levels, again, you can fully customize them in terms of what you actually want to block. So remember how I was telling you about the different sequences of activities where an exfiltration is happening. So you can, for example, say, okay, if someone is definitely doing something risky that I don't want them to do, well, I want to have them blocked. So as an example, there are 3 different levels of those risk levels. And just as a fun fact, let's say we've got a Taylor Swift here as our representation of a minor risk. Let's say this specific user had no risky activity. So at this moment in time, we don't really want to add any additional controls. This channel here, let's say he's a representation of a moderate risk. So this might be someone that is after resigning or just handing in their notice just now. You know, they worked on a sensitive project. There's no risky activity just yet, but just as a precaution, we want to block BYOD and USB as well, and also and kind of enforce them to require the terms of use to be accepted. And then as a high risk, we've got Charlie Sheen. This is someone that resigns, you know, worked on a sensitive project and there were some risky activities detected. Well, in this case, we can get adaptive protection with an insider risk management to work in conjunction with conditional access to revoke their access pending a review. Jay, to answer, I used to have, yeah, I used to have PDD instead of Charlie Sheen, but ever since he's been convicted, I just don't feel comfortable using him as an example. He's just like a step too far anymore, you know. Ronaldo, moderate risk. Are you a fan? Because that will determine then my answer. But you know, it is someone that left Manchester and you know, could be moderate risk. He's the GOAT. Absolutely, yeah. And don't take it like too personally, guys. This is just an example. I don't want anyone like coming after me in my comments or in my DMs after the session. Good stuff, good stuff. So yeah, again, I'm sure you guys are more familiar with it now, but with an Entra ID, we've got an amazing tool called conditional access. If you don't know what it is, well, you've been living under the rock. So one of the conditions within conditional access is the insider risk. So this is how you configure whether you want to block someone with an elevated or a moderate risk level. And when you do enable that policy, when you jump back into the Purview Admin Center under the adaptive protection with an insider risk management, you can actually monitor that policy state and see whether that has propagated properly for you. I would definitely suggest changing the levels for adaptive protection because the ones out of the box are very, very noisy and you are then at a risk of blocking someone that wasn't even after doing any exfiltration because that's how inaccurate some of the classification can be. And the last step for enabling adaptive protection is just to toggle that on. You would think that this would be a first step, but it's actually the last step within the process. Again, I've got a lot of content around adaptive protection on my blog, so feel free to go and check it out. So high risk is not linked to risky users in Entra. It's completely separate. If I go back to my screenshot over here, so you will see that the user risk level is a completely different condition in here, and it relates to the Entra IDs or the identity protections user risk level. And this is the insider risk level, which is completely different, nothing to do with the one in Entra. Okay. Thanks, Jay. Okay, so getting into the good stuff. So, you know, Purview is all great, but again, it won't help us cover all the different gaps. within the data security space. So we do need to go and use Intune for that. So one of the great tools that we can use are app protection policies. So again, I'm sure you guys are more familiar with app protection policies, but that kind of protects the data without requiring full device enrollment. So if you've got a BYOD supported within your business, you can protect the corporate data inside the applications rather than the device itself. So some of the key capabilities here and why our protection policies are really, really useful. Again, we've got that ability to separate corporate data and personal data with an application. So if I've got Outlook or Teams installed on my personal device and I only want to control the data within those corporate applications like Outlook and Teams, I can, protect that data itself. I don't have to go and extend it to other applications sitting on my specific device. So it's here to prevent that data leakage via, copy and paste restrictions, where someone can copy an email or copy a message from Teams, paste it into Exchange, or whether someone can do a screen capture of a message that they received, whether they can save something on their device, and so on. And you can also enforce encryption on that app data and require an app level PIN or biometrics, which I would definitely recommend putting in place as well. So why protection policies matter for our data security? Well, as I said, it extends the Purview data protection capabilities to mobile scenarios because it is not something that we can fully achieve with just Purview on its own, and then complements the data loss prevention by enforcing the different controls at the application layer itself. And again, it kind of follows that zero trust and defense in depth approach and reduces the reliance on the full device management, which for some organizations might not be feasible to do. So how Purview and Intune come together? Well, Purview in this specific scenario, it defines what that sensitive data is, but we cannot extend those capabilities to mobile devices or personal devices. And then Intune comes in handy here to enforce how that data can be used. Again, remember how Purview DNP, we cannot stop someone from taking a screenshot or taking a picture of something. Well, if they open that sensitive data within Outlook or within Teams on their mobile device, that would be within the scope of our app protection policies. At least we have some degree of control in here. And again, I won't be going through the process of how to set up those app protection policies. This is the EMS Discord, so I would say everyone would be familiar enough with how to set it up, but you do need to set up them separately for each one of the platforms. So a separate one for Android, separate one for iPad and iOS as well. What if I require, yeah, what if I require threat level by Defender? Will it use VPN on all of my applications? Well, that depends what the Defender is on. Well, actually, I'm not too sure actually. So, do you mean like a Windows device or a mobile device? On mobile devices. And would you have Defender deployed to those mobile devices? I presume you wouldn't, because it's definitely doable, but there are some prerequisites and caveats to that as well. It's not, yeah, but if someone knows and they want to jump in and answer that question in the chat, that would be great. I see some people jumping in already, so that's great. Thanks, guys. Okay, so another thing that is really, really great about Intune is that, well, we can gain the device level visibility and different compliance insights and also track installed applications. So where it's very, very useful in this day and age is that, people might be installing AI applications on the corporate managed devices, specifically mobile devices as well. And if we want to control that, if we want to have visibility over shadow AI, and maybe block some applications from being launched or from being installed on our mobile devices that we're trying to manage, well, Intune can help us with that. So from the visibility perspective, we've got the visibility in terms of monitoring the discovered apps within the Intune Admin Center. So if we jump to applications and then we go to the monitor, we can see the list of applications that our users have installed. Again, there is nothing kind of built in within Intune that will show us exactly what's the nature of the application, what's the category, but again, you can just export that list and put it in for the irony of it into an AI app and get it to get you that information fairly quickly. So that's just one way how you can find out whether someone was after installing something that they perhaps shouldn't have installed. So how to stop shadow AI with Defender and Intune? Well, with Defender and Defender for endpoints specifically, you can block access to AI websites via either browser on Windows and macOS with something called network protection. And you also have capabilities to uninstall or block AI applications on mobile devices using Intune as well. So let me take you through some of these scenarios as well. Again, in terms of the prerequisites, within the advanced features in the Defender portal, so security.microsoft.com, if we go and enable the custom network indicators, that is one of the prerequisites for actually setting up our indicators. So indicators of compromise, which are file hashes, IP addresses, URLs, or domains, which then you can add in here within this specific place in the portal, which you want to either block or explicitly allow. And apart from that, we do need some policies on the Intune side as well. So we're going to be using a device configuration profile. So in this specific example, what we're seeing on the screen, if we go to devices and then configuration and set up a profile for Windows. So for Windows, the configuration settings will just under Defender will say enable network protection, and we need to set it to enabled block mode. When it comes to a Mac OS device, the Microsoft Defender settings under network protection will say enforcement level, and it needs to be set to a block mode. So again, you can push out those policies to then all of your devices to make sure that the network protection is fully deployed, and you can use those indicators of compromise to block access to those shadow AI websites via the URLs or the IPs as well. Another thing that you can achieve with Intune in terms of stopping shadow AI is, for example, uninstalling AI applications on mobile devices. So if we take Android as an example, first of all, if you've got Google Play, so again, if you've got fully managed applications and you've got a Google Play account, you can then look for those specific AI applications that you do not wish your users had the ability to install. So if we look at the example of DeepSeek or Grok or Replica, once you can find them in the Google Play Store, you can then go into the properties of that specific application, and under the assignments, you can just use the uninstall function. And that will essentially prevent your end users from uninstalling the AI apps. Obviously, there are some caveats to that in terms of the device is actually fully managed by Intune. Are they fully corporate? And I think there's more complexity on Android than iOS. But again, those options are here for you. Again, all depends what way those devices were set up in the first place. But ideally, you would have that option. So in this specific case, it's a device restriction policy that will help you achieve us the same thing. So uninstall those apps on an Android mobile phone. And under the type of restricted application list, we can see marked over here. We can then go and look at the applications that we could find within the Google Play Store, and we can then go and select it. And then that will ensure that these are uninstalled from people's devices. On iOS and iPadOS, on the other hand, you can try and set up a setting catalog that will prevent your users from installing applications or even launching those applications on those devices. So for the likes of ChatGPT, we are using the app bundle IDs. So the one for ChatGPT would be com.openai.chat. But again, you can use those URLs and bundle IDs in here to block specific AI apps from launching on iOS and iPadOS. So in a case where maybe you're not you don't have that ability to fully block uninstalling, you can at least block them from launching on those specific corporate devices. And then again, another example, this time on an iOS, is how you can uninstall an AI app on that specific device. If you've got an Apple Business Manager and your devices are fully managed, you can go into a specific applications properties and then assign your users or devices into the uninstall options as well. So again, kind of eager to know. I know as you've put in a survey in place early on around application protection policies. Eager to know what's the verdict on assigning the client applications for the uninstall function, whether people think that this should be deployed to devices or users. And we're getting nearly to the end, so a couple of more slides to go. This is something that kind of came up over the last couple of months. For whatever reason, Microsoft decided that it would be a good idea to have the ability for the end users to use their personal Copilot and to use it on the work document. So Microsoft keeps saying that if someone uses their family or a personal plan, that it would have Copilot and using their kind of monthly allowance for those work documents, they would still be under the enterprise data agreement, so the data would be safe and it wouldn't be used for training the LLM models. However, if we look at the scenario of having BYOD, why would we even mix our combined personal and work profiles for Copilot when we look at the corporate data? That's just another opportunity for data exfiltration, right? So Microsoft kind of silently introduced that option, and obviously by default people can just do it. So what we can do within Intune, we can put in a policy for Microsoft 365 app. So it's a policy that you can only have one within your tenancy, and there's a bunch of different security baselines in here or different policies for those M365 apps that you can deploy to your end users, either to a group of them or to an entire tenancy. But one of those settings is multiple account access to Copilot for work documents. So in my personal opinion, people with personal Copilot plans or family plans should not be able to have access to work documents and use their personal plans to, for example, summarize something or create a new document out of that, or use it in the kind of enterprise data protected chat. There should be a clear separation between what is actually allowed by the business versus what people can do within their personal setups. So I would definitely recommend that you guys would put that policy in place with that specific setting and set it to not allowed. And that will prevent users from using their personal plans for Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot specifically, to work on the corporate data. Okay, so some of the key takeaways. So again, going back to that point that, Microsoft Purview is only as powerful as you kind of make it to be, but it's that data security platform. But unfortunately, it no longer operates in isolation. So we do require that more holistic defense in-depth approach by utilizing different solutions and different products and fully kind of maximizing your investment in the different license that you have within Microsoft, because licensing is expensive. So make sure that you squeeze every single drop out of that license that you're paying for. And the data security, it really starts with a strong identity. So identity is still going to be your first line of defense. And once that is secure, you then go and look at your data. You do need to have that clear data classification in place and consistent enforcement across your devices and applications. And just last but not least, Purview provides that visibility, classification, and risk intelligence. Intune, on the other hand, will help us enforce controls, access endpoints, browser, mobile applications, which Purview at the moment lacks. You should be also utilizing, the full Defender suite. You should be utilizing the Entra ID tools such as conditional access and device and Defender for cloud apps as well to complete that full picture and have a really good data security posture in place. And final thought, to fully protect your organizational data, you have to secure who accesses that data, where that data lives, and how it's used everywhere. So regardless of the app or a device that someone is using. And with that, oh gosh, is this session recorded? Oh, what a question right at the very end. Oh, correct. In Purview now in the AI realm, it just doesn't do its whole thing just by itself. You do need to go and look at other portals to fully secure your data. Purview and I think Copilot, all those different agents that are popping up, it's no longer just about looking at one specific solution, and anyone kind of working with Copilot or agents trying to build your own agents. It's 10 different portals that unfortunately we need to look at, but it's all about protecting our data. Whereas it's sitting, within our cloud repositories on our endpoints, where it's sitting within Power Platform. It's something that I didn't even mention, but if you want to protect the data that someone has within AI applications or AI agents, Purview and Intune are not even enough, even when combined together. Not even with Defender being part of the play. You need to look at Power Platform, you need to look at Copilot Studio settings, and a bunch of other things as well. So we definitely need to take that more holistic approach, and it's something that doesn't specifically make me very happy with the direction where Microsoft is taken, but it's the reality that we all kind of have to put up with at the moment. Yeah. See. Yeah. Well, some capabilities are available even at the business premium level. So again, go and fully maximize what you're paying for. Having something in place is always better than having nothing in place. So don't be trying to justify that, oh, we only have business premium. There's not much we can achieve with Purview. You'd be surprised what you can actually find if you only scope, let's say, data loss prevention to Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint. These are your key things. This is where data resides. This is where data is being exchanged, and also beyond data loss prevention, you've got classification. Yes, it is, far simpler, and those functionalities are definitely not the same as the ones at the E5 license level, but it is again better than having nothing at all in place. So go and fully optimize it and utilize all the capabilities, whether it's information protection, whether it's data loss prevention, whether it's retention, auditing capabilities, all that kind of good stuff. For Purview, definitely Windows. I mean, there are some features being rolled out to macOS devices as well. Again, from the Purview perspective, we cannot really do much on mobile devices at the moment, but Windows is definitely the one that has the most amount of functionalities. There are some DLP policies that you can push out to macOS, but that experience will not be as extensive as the one on Windows. So Windows is definitely that one platform that um, has a huge advantage over the amount of functionalities that we can deploy to those devices. Let me see. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, how do audit override justifications for like a year or a quarter? How would you audit override? Okay, yeah. So obviously they're going to be within the audit logs and they're going to be within the activity explorer as well. If you're looking for the last year or a quarter, probably getting them into some kind of a SIEM solution. Sentinel probably would be perfect for that. And also within Sentinel, you've got a lot of extra capabilities that you don't necessarily have within the Purview tools in terms of the information that you can get in a more user-friendly way from the audit logs, right? So audit log is fine, but getting that data and fully understanding that data, that's a little bit tricky. If you get that data exported to Sentinel or RSIM, you can use KQL queries. So, for example, those Costa query language to surface some of the metadata that you wouldn't necessarily find within the activity log, for example, or within the alerts. Yeah, so that's probably be my first choice. Go for it. Well, I mean, you've got all the audit logs within Purview because that's where audit log sits, right? There's a literal solution called audit that will retain all the information that you see within Entra or within Defender or within Intune and so on. But I would say the transition will not be an easy one. I know a couple of people that were working on a lot of different Intune products, so we're very familiar with the Intune suite, and then they switched over to do some projects with Purview, and they don't really like that experience because of how flaky the GUI is. The portal, again, it's not very user intuitive or user friendly. And I think that's one of the reasons why people don't like it. They just give up. And also, propagation time. You cannot expect having an instant answer from Purview when it comes to anything really. If you've got a sensitivity label that you're trying to publish to the end users, we're probably talking about roughly 24 hours until those users can fully test it. If it's a data loss prevention policies, while the GUI says 2 hours, we know that it's roughly half an hour. But again, you have to wait until that policy is replicated, right? So kind of similar to some of the policies that you might be deploying within Intune, but worse. When you look at data retention, that's a whole other thing altogether. But within retention, when you apply a retention policy to your users or to your sites, we're talking about 7 days until that policy is active. So from even the testing perspective, it's definitely something that frustrates me and other administrators that we cannot just go and test something within one day. No, we have to put in the configuration on day one. On the second day, we might be able to test the labels and DLP, but to test the data retention, we have to wait at least 7 days. So it's the adoption and getting used to the portal and the way that it works. You do need to understand how exactly it works behind the scenes and have a lot of patience. So the transition for someone that I used to work with different solutions is definitely not an easy one. Onboarding yourself to Purview in terms of you learning the capabilities. Well, I mean, Wellcast World is a great resource. Shameful plug. No, I'm joking. I mean, there are a lot of different resources online that are great, but I think with Purview is just one of those things where you need to test it yourself. So ideally, you would have a testing environment where you can put policies in place, put a configuration in place before you can deploy to production environment, because things can break. I mean, if you deploy encryption to someone that didn't know that they were going to have encryption, if you go and affect, let's say, someone from management, they might just see this, whether it was planned or whether it was not planned. If it wasn't communicated properly, if it wasn't planned properly, all it takes is for someone at the top to say, oh, we don't like it. I couldn't open a file when I was busy. I couldn't, I don't know, join a meeting, or I couldn't send a file to someone outside of the organization because the policy was after blocking me. So there's a huge end user impact with anything you do within Purview. So you do have to be very, very careful with that. There are great resources, but again, learn by doing rather than just reading the theory. And again, some of the Microsoft documentations are not very accurate. So you rely on community. Oh, the worst thing about Purview right now is the propagation time across the solutions. The best thing about Purview right now, well, it protects your data, so it cannot get any better than that, right? And that fully outweighs all the other disadvantages that we have within Purview. And it's no longer something nice to have, as in Purview policies or data classification or data loss prevention, so on. It's a necessity in this day and age, especially with AI tools. And AI has been a massive driver for the demand for Purview. And, it makes sense because Purview has always been there, but no one has really been interested in that. But now people see that they have no choice but to go and do a project around Purview. So I would say it's about time. It's great that we see that, but it's a bit sad that something like that had to happen. Like with the introduction of AI is something that forced people to go towards deploying Purview capabilities. Of course. Yeah, I'll probably read through the messages and stuff. But look, guys, yeah, if anyone has any other questions, as an afterthought after the session, just let me know. My DMs are open, so feel free to ping me a message. Thanks very much once again for having me on here. It's been great, really great questions, really great interactions from the community, and thanks very much for everything that you guys are doing. So I see community and Discord being very, very active. I'm not that often on Discord. I just have my notifications disabled, but when I do come on, I do enjoy your memes and your chat. So yeah, definitely always great logging on here and reading through some of the messages. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one. Cheers.